General Hospital spoilers indicate that Sasha Gilmore Corbin may soon disappear, leaving her newborn baby, Daisy Corinthos Corbin, in the care of her godparents, Jason Morgan and Felicia Scorpio. Sasha's postpartum paranoia is intensifying, exacerbated by her previous loss of son Liam Mike Corin. With whispers of Daisy's possible disappearance, whether through kidnapping, a mental health crisis, drug relapse, or worse, the question arises: will Jason and Felicia have to stand up to defend Daisy sooner than expected? Could Jen Sidwell or Drew Quartermain have been responsible for Sasha's death? And what does this mean for Michael Corinthos? What will happen with Sasha's disappearance? Sasha's frail state, as evidenced in frantic times at the Quartermain home, has her concerned for Daisy's safety and wondering if she is imagining all of these problems. Rumors of her departure spark a variety of theories, including a kidnapping by Sidwell or Drew to destabilize Michael following his custody victory over Amelia and Wiley Corinthos, a voluntary stint in mental health treatment to address her spiraling fears, a relapse into drug use to escape paranoia, echoing her previous struggles, or even a lethal act by Sidwell or Drew, who is enraged by Michael's role in Willow Corinthos losing custody. Which road will Jason and Felicia take, and when will they need to act? Jason and Felicia's godparent duties come into play. Jason and Felicia, Daisy's godparents, are prepared to step in if Sasha vanishes. Jason, who is extremely loyal to Michael and suspicious of Drew's machinations, such as his lies about Michael's rejection in Germany, may take command and ensure Daisy's safety. Felicia, with her history of safeguarding Maxie Jones and her grandkids, might provide mother care, but their presence may conflict with Carly Spencer's protective instincts. If Sasha is gone, whether seized by Sidwell or seeking treatment, will Jason and Felicia band together to protect Daisy? Or will they encounter issues balancing their own dramas, such as Jason's mob ties, Felicia's investigating, and Max's distaste for Daisy's chosen godfather? A crisis with endless possibilities. Sasha's imminent absence might have far-reaching consequences for both her daughter and Michael. If Sidwell kidnaps her, Jason's mafia skills may result in a rescue, but a drug relapse may see Felicia guide her to rehabilitation. Drew's revenge, which may target Sasha in order to harm Michael, could worsen if additional information is revealed. Will Jason and Felicia be forced to step up for Daisy sooner than planned? Or will Sasha's unclear fate, kidnapping, therapy, relapse, or worse, leave them rushing to protect her daughter? Keep checking back with us for more General Hospital news and spoilers to see how everything plays out. When it was announced that Eva LaRue from All My Children would play Blaze's mother, Natalia, everyone was ecstatic. That is, they were ecstatic until they met the character, an irritating mother who spewed homophobic slurs as if they were appropriate. Needless to say, the character did not catch on. So a year and a half after LaRue's debut, Natalia has been written off, having succumbed to a lethal combination of medicines and alcohol. The daytime vet, whose Maria was one of All My Children's most cherished heroines, felt the end was near when General Hospital put a stop to Natalia's affair with mob lord Sonny. People just weren't buying it, because they hated my character so much, says the actress to Soap Opera Digest. I was so vilified that no matter what the writers did, it just wasn't a solid enough rehabilitation that they were gonna buy me with Sonny. Their connection, partnership, or whatever you call it was not a good look for the dimpled Don. Natalia condemned his daughter Christina's bond with her daughter Blaze as abnormal, and kept the former Allison a secret her entire life. Natch's kid, Marco, is no more of a fan of Natalia than Blaze or the viewers. So there's a lesson for all the soaps. If you're bringing on daytime royalty and hoping to keep them around for a long time, maybe don't saddle them with an unlikable character. If Days of Our Lives hires LaRue to bring Javi's mother Hilda back from the grave, they would be well to keep this in mind. Bold and Beautiful may want to keep her in mind if she is cast as the next Eye on Fashion editor, who changes Dollar Bill's head. Jason Morgan had been through every type of mayhem Port Charles could throw at him. Mob battles, betrayals, near-death situations, and the loss of individuals he cared about the most. But nothing could have prepared him for the moment he realized the newest person in need of his protection wasn't a hardened ally or a familiar face from the past, but a young wide-eyed girl named Daisy who had found herself in the midst of a crisis far larger than she could understand. What made things even more tricky was that he wouldn't be undertaking this task alone. Felicia Scorpio, who had been drawn in from a completely different direction, would be right beside him, whether they liked it or not. Daisy was not someone Jason had planned to get connected with. She'd begun as a supporting character. A quiet girl with a mystery past and a proclivity for showing up at the wrong time. However, when she appeared one night at Bobby's back door with blood on her hands and panic in her eyes, everything changed. She hadn't spoken in a long time, and when she did, it wasn't intelligible. Jason could only interpret that she was afraid, that someone was after her, and that she had nowhere to turn. Jason didn't want to bring her in. He wasn't at a point in his life where he needed additional complication. But instinct took control. She was a child just out of her teens, and she was terrified for reasons other than getting into trouble. This was not someone who had shoplifted or fled from home. This person had seen something, or worse, done something. And whatever it was, she believed her life was at stake. Felicia's involvement began on a completely different road. She had lately returned to a more formal role with the PCPD, serving as a civilian consultant on cases involving trauma sufferers. Her extensive and complicated experience with danger made her uniquely prepared to aid in situations when standard tactics had failed. When Daisy was discovered sleeping in an abandoned storage facility near the docks a few days after disappearing from Jason's watch, Felicia was called in to try to piece together her story. Felicia was surprised by the barricade Daisy had constructed around herself. It wasn't just dread. It was hardened distrust stemming from betrayal by those who were supposed to protect you. Felicia, on the other hand, was experienced with walls. She had built enough of her own. She entered slowly and gently. She used her own history to create bridges. Her own scars. Her own story of survival. Daisy started talking gradually. What Felicia and Jason didn't expect was how rapidly their relationship with Daisy escalated from concern to disaster. Daisy's name began to surface on the radar of those who had no idea she existed. There were vague threats. Strange dudes show up to Kelly's. Jason intervened barely in time to prevent an incident on the pier. Daisy's secret was not only risky, but also live. People were willing to kill to find out what she was hiding. The truth emerged in fragments. Daisy had been a member of a health organization in another state that pretended to be spiritual healing, but was actually a well-hidden criminal enterprise. The gang utilized young ladies as couriers for illegal products under the cover of meditation retreats and holistic tourism. Daisy had been groomed, manipulated, and compelled to transport items over state borders. She had no idea what was in them. She only knew she was terrified to say no. But what made her story even more important was that she had stumbled upon something she was not supposed to witness. A shipment went wrong. A meeting turned violent. And a flash drive she had taken in a rush, tucked it in her bag, and had forgotten about until now. Jason discovered it first, concealed behind the false bottom of her backpack. The contents were encrypted, but Spinelli proceeded to work. What they uncovered threw the whole situation wide open. Names. Accounts. Routes. There is evidence linking multiple people to the trafficking organization, including some with important connections in Port Charles. The consequences were astounding, and it placed a target on Daisy's back that no one could avoid. Jason, now fully invested, relocated Daisy to a safe house. Not only did she have important proof, but something about her reminded him of victims he had attempted and failed to save in the past. Robin. Emily. Courtney. He was not going to fail Daisy. Not this time. Felicia also stayed close, creating a bond with Daisy that astonished even her. Perhaps it was the mother in her, or a part of her that remembered what it was like to be afraid and hushed. She taught Daisy to trust her senses again, and to stop blaming herself for what had happened. They gradually began to notice true signs of healing. But Port Charles was not a place where secrets remained concealed, and word spread. There were whispers that the safe house was insecure. Daisy had been sighted. Jason began working around the clock, causing interference, tapping into old contacts, and alerting those who needed to know. And yet he couldn't shake the notion that someone was constantly one step ahead. The tipping moment occurred on a wet night when the power went out at the safe home. Jason and Daisy were inside while Felicia was on her way. The generator kicked in, but something felt off. Jason glided through the home like a shadow, inspecting every nook. The first shot roared out through the window, almost missing Daisy's head. He tackled her to the ground and rolled both of them behind the couch. Glass broke. Another shot. And then another. Felicia arrived seconds later, her tires squealing, just as Jason rushed through the rear door with Daisy. The attacker had vanished, but he was still dangerously close. They'd been found. It was time for a new plan. Jason escorted Daisy to the Quartermain cabin, which was distant, lonely, and little known. Spinelli redirected any digital trails. Felicia remained with them. They established a makeshift squad, unlikely comrades united by one goal: to keep Daisy alive. And somewhere in the midst of the mayhem, the girl they were safeguarding lost her mystery and began to transform into something else. Someone else. A survivor. Daisy began asking questions. Regarding her legal possibilities. Regarding testifying. About what happened next. And for the first time she talked about her family, whom she hadn't seen in years. A younger sister. A mother who had attempted but failed to shield her from the world's cruelty. She did not want to be a runaway anymore. She did not want to become a victim. Jason and Felicia could notice the change. She wasn't simply terrified, she was enraged. Determined. Prepared to stand up. However, standing up comes with penalties. The trial began quietly. The DA collaborated with Diane Miller to develop protection measures, phony names, and lock chambers. Daisy will initially testify anonymously, only exposing her identity in sealed portions of the court. Even that wasn't enough to prevent what happened next. Felicia got a threatening package on the eve of the preliminary hearing, which included a photo of Daisy sleeping that was clearly taken lately, and a message scrawled on the back. "You can't hide her forever." Jason wished to remove Daisy from the trial. Felicia disagreed. But Daisy was the one who made the decision. "I'm not running," she explained. "Not anymore." The hearing was tense. Daisy took the stand behind a screen, her voice firm despite her trembling palms. She shared her story. She provided names. She took the court through everything, from the manipulation to the delivery to the night she fled. The courtroom remained silent. When she finished, the ladies in the gallery, nurses, advocates, and strangers who had come to support her, were all in tears. Jason stood in the back, arms folded, observing with quiet pride. Felicia sat close, clutching a rosary and barely breathing, until Daisy could safely step down. The aftermath was a mess. Arrests have been made. Some suspects fled. Others turned against each other. But the ring was disassembled. Daisy was promised protection, relocation, and the opportunity to start a new life. And that's when she surprised everyone. "I want to stay," she explained. "I'd like to start over here. In Port Charles." Jason was unsure at first. His world was not exactly designed for fresh starts. But he agreed. Felicia did as well. Daisy was able to get a part-time job at the Invader thanks to Maxie's assistance, where she worked under Alexis Davis, who looked after her. She began therapy with Kevin. She got a small apartment with the support of the Corinthos Foundation, and enrolled in night studies. She would occasionally pay Jason or Felicia a visit. She only stayed long enough to tell them that she had not forgotten what they had done, how they rescued her, how they believed her while no one else did. For his part, Jason no longer saw Daisy as a burden. She proved that he was still capable of protecting something wonderful, that he could be more than just a tool for someone else's agenda. Felicia saw something else entirely: hope, redemption, the proof that scars may be turned into something more powerful than suffering. Daisy's life has finally moved forward. She still experienced nightmares. She still flinched when someone called her name too rapidly. But she was healing. And at Port Charles, where danger and drama seldom went away for long, healing was everything. Because in a world where so many people have been forgotten, sacrificed, or left behind, Jason and Felicia choose to step up, to show up, and to stay. Daisy, despite having every reason not to, chose to trust in them. And in herself. The journey ahead would not be simple. But she wasn't strolling alone anymore. Drew Kane and Willow Tate have long since drifted apart within Port Charles, their tales splitting as life and obstacles tugged them in opposite paths. Many town residents, and especially those who watched their every move from afar, saw their connection as nothing more than a blip, a moment in time that was tested and then quickly dismissed in favor of more vital problems. But there remained a loyal core of believers, both in universe and outside, who clung to the faint hope that Drew and Willow's story was not done. and their enthusiasm was beginning to amaze everyone, including the characters themselves. Drew and Willow hadn't previously enjoyed an exciting love affair. Their relationship, if you could call it that, had been characterized by soft tenderness and mutual understanding rather than fire and passion. But occasionally that was enough to establish a close bond. Drew had stepped in quietly and consistently throughout Willow's worst days, when she was facing mortality and dealing with the complexities of her fragile relationships with Nina and Michael. He had been a shoulder to lean on, an unsaid source of support, and for a short time a lifeline. And while they never really exceeded that border, the potential lingered there, like an unsolved riddle. When Willow recovered from her health scare and resumed her life with Michael and their children, the chance of anything with Drew went into the background. Drew, on the other hand, slid into his own set of problems, including incarceration, manipulation, and an increasingly bitterness that was difficult to conceal. Despite their brief contacts, a glimmer persisted. Mutual regard. A gentleness that neither of them appeared to exhibit to anyone else. It was sufficient to plant a seed. Over time, that seed sprouted into speculation. Speculation gave way to loyalty. A small group of fans, both in Port Charles and from the stands, began to root for what could have been, and what could still be. They pointed out how Drew softened when he spoke to Willow even now. How her voice could calm him when he was at his most agitated. How she, probably more than anybody else, saw through his facade after returning from Pentonville. Initially, the whispers were modest. Comment here and a glimpse there. But as Michael tightened his grasp on the life they created, with all the pressure, secrecy, and latent resentment boiling beneath the surface, Willow began to visibly struggle under the weight. She grinned less. Her words were measured. The enthusiasm she had exuded looked dimmed, as if she were fighting a war within herself that no one could see. Drew gradually returned, not in large flashy ways, but in crucial occasions. Willow had taken up a deception project for the hospital, and I offered to help. When Michael was late, he volunteered to pick up Wiley from school, even though it was not his responsibility, taking the time to stop by and ask Willow how she was doing, even though most people merely asked out of politeness. Those instances were not unnoticed. Carly, for one, began to raise her eyebrows. She had long been Drew's closest confidant, but even she was beginning to wonder where his allegiance were now. Her discussions with Drew became strained. She felt a shift, faint but noticeable, and she didn't like it. Carly had invested in Drew, stood by him through scandal and silence, and seeing him gravitate toward someone who was not only younger, but also dangerously close to Michael's world bothered her more than she let on. Michael too had noticed. First he dismissed it. Drew had always been close to his family. He trusted him, or he used to. However, as Willow became more reserved and Drew became more present, Michael tightened his grip. He began popping up at home unexpectedly, checking in at times when he might have previously trusted Willow's independence. Willow, stuck in the center, felt herself begin to suffocate. What started as a distant fan idea, that Drew and Willow had unresolved tension, grew into a reality that was impossible to ignore. Even though most locals dismissed it as a projection or fantasy, the persistence of the concept developed its own gravity. In town square cafes and hospital corridors, whispering became louder. Social media sites following the Port Charles elite began circulating images of Drew and Willow at community events. Old clips resurfaced. Hashtags appeared. Hashtag Dillo Rising trended for several days. For fans who had always believed it was a confirmation, those who had dismissed it grew irritated. Everyone rolled their eyes. Comment sections are loaded with mocking retorts. Nonetheless, those who backed Drew and Willow were unwavering in their support. Willow experienced the transformation in private. She had loved Michael and may still do so, but their connection was no longer as tender as it had was. The intimacy had evaporated. Conversations turned transactional. Their relationship now felt more like a joint mission to safeguard Wiley and Amelia than a romance. Michael continued telling her that everything was great, but his eyes told a different story. He was exhausted, secretive, and emotionally aloof as usual. Drew, by contrast, made no requests. There is no pressure. Just quiet support. One rainy afternoon altered everything. Willow was stuck at the hospital after a long shift, and Michael was scheduled to pick her up but never arrived. Her calls remained unanswered. She waited nearly an hour before giving up and stepping outside, only to discover Drew waiting beside his truck, clutching an umbrella. "You looked like you needed an out," he stated simply, unlocking the passenger door. She entered without saying a word. The silence between them was thick, but not uncomfortable. They did not converse much while he drove. Willow had not felt this relaxed in a long time. She didn't have to pretend with Drew. She didn't have to explain why she appeared tired or worn out, or why she kept glancing out the window, as if her mind was elsewhere. When he left her off at home, she halted before exiting. "Thank you," she replied gently, her voice catching slightly. Drew gazed at her, his eyes warm yet unreadable. "Always." That small exchange was all it required. The next morning a photograph appeared online, shot by someone across the street. It showed Drew's pickup parked at the curb, Willow resting against the door, her gaze focused on his. The caption simply stated, "Looks more than friendly to me." It ignited a firestorm. Within hours, the controversy had swept social media. Was Willow deceitful? Was Drew interfering? Was it just friendship? Or something more? Carly declined to respond in public, but she confronted Drew behind the scenes. The conversation was brief and tense. "If you're crossing lines, you need to tell me right now," she added, folding her arms. Drew did not refute the relationship. He did not confirm it either. His silence, however, revealed much. Willow, too, found herself with questions. From Michael, Nina, and even Elizabeth. Everyone appeared to have an opinion. Some people judged. Some defended. Willow, for the first time, realized she didn't care what people thought. She cared about her feelings. What she felt was seen. The controversy simply widened the schism. Those who had grown tired of the Drew and Willow drama found it exhausting. They accused the couple of dragging out something that never had any depth. They insisted that the tale lacked chemistry and had no payoff. However, no matter how loud the criticism became, the die-hard fans grew louder. Signs of their solidarity appeared everywhere. Anonymous donations to the hospital in the name of hope and new beginnings. Messages left at Deception's offices encouraging Willow to follow her dreams. Even in the Quartermain mansion, Monica felt Drew's mood change. Less guarded and more open. "Someone's putting light back in you," she murmured over tea one afternoon. Drew smiled softly but did not respond. The more outer pressures pulled them apart, the closer they became emotionally. Still, they hadn't reached the finish line. Neither wanted to damage what Willow and Michael had built, especially because children were involved. But the draw was undeniable. Every small moment felt charged. It all culminated in one evening at the hospital charity gala. Both were present, along with the majority of Port Charles society. Michael had canceled last minute, citing a business issue. Willow was left alone, clad in delicate silver with her hair tied up. Drew approached her near the stairway and offered her a drink. "You shouldn't be here with me," she stated gently. "And yet," Drew said, "here we are." They sat on the side of the ballroom watching the crowd, talking about nothing and everything, laughing. For a little period of time the stress subsided. But suddenly music started to play. A slow tune. Couples flooded the dance floor. Drew stood and extended a hand. "One dance," he replied. Willow paused, but she took his hand. They danced. And for those few minutes the rest of the world faded away. There was no drama. No Michael. No Carly. No expectations. Just two people who had discovered something in each other that they couldn't exactly describe but couldn't deny. The following morning, everything changed again. Michael discovered out. No one knew if it was from a photograph, a witness, or his own monitoring. But his reply was quick and cold. He approached Willow at their home, demanding to know if there was more to her relationship with Drew than she had revealed. She did not lie. But she did not apologize. "We've been falling apart for a long time, Michael," she told me. "You just refused to see it." He did not yell. He did not plead. He simply nodded and went out of the room, leaving her standing there. Word spread quickly. Carly blamed Drew. Nina blamed Willow. The Quartermains sought to remain neutral. Wiley inquired as to why Daddy had not come home for dinner. Nonetheless, the Drew and Willow followers remained faithful. They had always noticed something that others hadn't. A story constructed not on huge gestures or scandals, but on patient, consistent connection, on healing, on second chances. In a community like Port Charles, where love was frequently tumultuous and volatile, perhaps this gentler type of love was the most radical of all. Time would tell what they'd become. But is there hope? That never wavered. Not for those who still believe. General Hospital teasers and updates hint that a seduction game is coming up on the ABC series. Flirtation at the baseball game is only the beginning. Could Sonny Corinthos charm his way out of a takedown by ADA Justine Turner? It wouldn't be the first time Sonny worked with a lawyer, or even a district attorney. Of course, everyone is aware that Christina Corinthos Davis' mother is Alexis Davis and her father is Sonny, who had a romantic relationship with a lawyer. Around 15 years ago, he had a romantic relationship with Claire Walsh, a prosecutor who, like Turner, was very career-oriented. Putting Sonny Corinthos away would have been the pinnacle of her career, but she fell for him. Sonny acknowledged to Dante Falconeri that he became engaged with Claire on the rebound. But with Turner, who may remind Sonny of Claire, the tale may be different. Could Sonny lure Turner on and romance her, charming his way out of a takedown? Who is the bigger devil in disguise, Sonny or Turner? One of the most pressing questions in this scenario is who is the bigger devil in disguise? Sonny or the undercover cop attempting to catch him off guard? One thing she may not realize is that Sonny has recently experienced a situation in which a close female friend fell for him, but he did not fall for her, so he is on guard. The scenario with Natalia Ramirez did not go well, and he is already on watch since he does not trust Turner. That covert gift of a baseball glove was a test to see how she'd react if she believed he was interested, and she sent out a lot of conflicting signals. It's a game of cat and mouse. It's a cat and mouse game, and the question is who is smarter, the cat or the mouse, as Sonny decides to leap in after testing the waters. Sonny, like Claire Walsh, isn't trying to purposefully harm Turner if she's deceived, any more than he intended to mislead Natalia. But he's taking advantage of her not-so-subtle attraction to him to get a leg up, knowing she'll use Natalia against him. If Sonny can woo Turner without making things too serious, he may be able to charm himself out of a probable prison sentence. All he has to do is keep her off balance and distracted by him, so he can divert her attention away from his businesses. Sonny Corinthos had faced a lifetime of enemies, betrayals, and difficult choices. But dealing with ADA Pamela Turner was a completely different kind of tempest. She wasn't one of his normal opponents. No frantic rival mobster attempting to take over his territory. No federal agent ecstatic about a career-making capture. Turner was intelligent, composed, and patient. She played the long game, and her only purpose was to bring Sonny down once and for all. What she hadn't anticipated was the intricacy of the man behind the reputation, and the perilous temptation of Sonny's charm wielded like a scalpel. It started with a subpoena. Nothing showy or loud, just a subtle escalation. Turner had been circling for weeks, looking for an opportunity. The RICO violations were not sticking, and the new warehouse case was bogged down by red tape. But she had discovered rumors regarding Sonny's involvement in a recent armaments transfer out of Puerto Rico, and while she lacked direct proof, she had enough circumstantial evidence to make it hurt. Sonny did not panic. He never did. However, he carefully observed her movements, noting how she showed up at his properties and chatted to those close to him under the appearance of casual inquiry. Even his bartender at the Savoy had been questioned, but Curtis had informed Sonny long before Turner's squad entered the building. She was decent but not perfect,